The moment Vera stepped onto the ground of the human colony, she felt the faintest hum of dissonance. It was subtle, a kind of cosmic interference, like a glitch in a perfect symphony. Her long ears twitched, and her eyes narrowed as she adjusted the color of her armored suit to a confident crimson. The sleek material shimmered, catching the faint glow of the colony's twin suns as they dipped behind a distant mountain range. The air tasted wrong, a strange mixture of synthetic ozone and something she couldn't quite place, something organic. Yet the moment had arrived. It was time to put this human in his place. Vera had been sent here for a reason. The Aranthi Dominion had conducted their research, and they were sure of one thing. Humans were weak. Unpredictable, yes, but weak. And the colony, nestled on the edge of human expansion into a cluster of promising stars, would be a perfect test. If these humans couldn't even manage a basic defense against a single Aranthi warrior, what hope did they have against an empire that spanned more than 40 systems? She approached the designated duel zone, a circular arena marked by flickering holographic lights and half-baked drones zipping overhead like drunk fireflies. The crowd gathered, a ragtag group of colonists, some on foot, some floating in hoversuits, a few robots milling about in the back, possibly there for entertainment, possibly there to observe her impending victory. Vera could hear them whispering in awe, though she wasn't sure if they were admiring her or wondering if the human could survive her first strike. The truth she knew was irrelevant. The challenge had been accepted. The countdown began. 30 seconds, announced the AI referee, its voice smooth and emotionless, like every other AI she had ever encountered. She smirked to herself. It's only going to take 1 minute, she thought, adjusting her stance. This would be easy. 15 seconds, the AI continued. Vera cracked her knuckles, her gaze never leaving the human standing at the center of the ring. Ian, he was called, but honestly, that didn't matter. He was no more than an insect to her. Her gaze flickered down to her wrist for a moment, where an encrypted message from her superior buzzed. Do not underestimate the humans. They are unpredictable. Vera rolled her eyes. Unpredictable. My left ear. 10 seconds, the AI intoned. Ian looked, well, less than impressive. He stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt with some nonsense text that said, I'm just here for the snacks. His sneakers were battered, like they'd seen more than their fair share of disaster, and his hair, disheveled and unkempt, gave him the look of someone who had just been dragged out of a nap he definitely hadn't wanted to take. In short, Vera couldn't believe this was her opponent. Even the way he fidgeted, scratching the back of his head, his eyes darting from one corner of the arena to another, like he was looking for the exit, suggested someone who had no idea what was about to hit him. 3, 2, 1. The AI's countdown was precise, methodical. It felt almost ceremonial. And then it happened. Vera moved first, her feet a blur as she closed the distance between them in half a heartbeat. She was faster than the eye could follow, her armor shifting in tune with the rhythmic beat of her pulse. With a swift, practiced strike, she aimed for his chest, fully intending to send him sprawling, incapacitated by the force. But then, inexplicably, Ian sidestepped. Not in any graceful way, mind you. He simply shuffled. A half-hearted step to the left, more like someone trying to avoid a falling pigeon than a trained fighter evading an assault. But somehow she missed. Not by much, but enough to stagger forward, her momentum carrying her off balance for a brief, unexpected moment. Her brow furrowed. Impossible. She didn't have time to recover before he did something even stranger. Without turning around or even making a deliberate move, Ian's right hand shot out toward a floating drone hovering nearby, just a few feet above his head. The drone, presumably there to film the match, whirred and buzzed as if reacting to a command. And then, and this was the part that really threw her off, it spun around, malfunctioning, as if it had been caught in an invisible net. There was a brief, ridiculous moment where the drone's artificial intelligence seemed to short-circuit, broadcasting a series of confused beeps. In a panic, the drone blasted a burst of spark and smoke right into Vera's face. She staggered back, her vision blurring for half a second, the intense heat of the drone's failure singeing her cheek. Ian, meanwhile, stood there, blinking up at the sky, completely unaware of the chaos he'd just caused. You all right? He called out, scratching his head. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. Vera stood there furious, but more confused than anything else. That wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, you know what? It's fine, Ian continued, looking mildly apologetic. These drones, they've got a mind of their own sometimes. You just gotta give them a little direction. Like a suggestion, you know? Vera, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, narrowed her eyes. I will not be humiliated by a malfunctioning drone, she muttered under her breath, her voice just a bit more clipped than before. She steadied herself, taking a deep breath, before focusing once more on her human adversary. Ian, though, seemed completely unfazed by the situation. He actually yawned and stretched out his arms. Well, if we're going to be here a while, can we at least get some popcorn? He asked casually, nodding toward a nearby vendor who seemed equally confused by the scene unfolding. The crowd, clearly entertained by the absurdity of the situation, began to murmur, laughter bubbling up around the arena. Vera's patience was wearing thin, but she had no choice but to continue. You've only delayed the inevitable, she said, narrowing her eyes at him, her voice like a blade. I will defeat you. Ian gave her an exaggerated look of mock concern. Really? 'Cause I was kind of hoping for a rematch with snacks involved. You know, like a little more fun, a little less villainous monologuing? He grinned, leaning casually on one hip, completely at ease in the face of impending doom. Vera growled under her breath. What is this human? And with that thought, she launched herself forward again, this time with a more measured, deliberate strike, determined not to be thwarted by his oddities. But just as she closed in, Ian did something even stranger. He simply stood still. No dodging, no sudden movements. He just stood there. For a moment, Vera wondered if he had finally realized his fate. But then, with a slight tilt of his head in a wide, unrepentant grin, Ian spoke the words she would never forget. Your turn. Try to hit me. And that, more than anything else, is what made her hesitate. Something inside her, something deeply ingrained in the Aranthe sense of superiority, began to fracture. What is this human? The real game, it seemed, had only just begun. The air crackled with tension, but not the kind Vera was used to. No, this tension was unusual, almost absurd. Here she was, standing in the midst of an arena, facing a human who had yet to even break a sweat. And yet everything about this encounter felt wrong. She had struck with precision, intent, and power, and he had simply stood there, waiting. For a moment, she had thought the human had lost his nerve, that he had finally realized the sheer gulf between their strength and his puny, fragile existence. But no. No, Ian had stood there, hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for her to finish a badly told joke. Are you done? He asked casually. Because I'm starting to think we're just going in circles here. Vera blinked. Her ears twitched, a reflexive action from the sheer absurdity of his words. What? She muttered, trying to recalibrate her thoughts. I'm not going in circles. I'm trying to defeat you. Ian scratched his head, making a show of looking at his wrist as if he wore an invisible watch. Well, I guess you're taking your time, huh? She stared at him, the confusion growing like an ivy vine choking the edges of her resolve. This is not a joke. You are facing an Aranthe warrior, a trained fighter. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Oh no, I get it, Ian said, nodding with exaggerated sincerity. You're from another planet, and you've got superior skills or whatever. He gave a shrug that could not have been more nonchalant. I've seen this before. My neighbor Tim, he's from a place called Corporate America, and he used to try to flex his power every time we played cards. But let me tell you, that guy was all talk, just like you. Corporate America? Is that? Vera cut herself off, her mind spinning as she tried to process the nonsense coming from this human's mouth. You are comparing me to a card player? Sure am, Ian said, grinning. But hey, let's be fair. Tim wasn't very good at cards either. He always folded when it came to blackjack. Vera took a deep breath. You're unbelievable, she said, her voice suddenly colder. But fine. If you insist on this ridiculous game, I will just have to adjust my strategy. Good, Ian said, his tone playful. I was hoping for a little bit of a challenge. You know, like, hey, can you stop throwing things at me, though? He ducked, barely missing the stray energy pulse that she had sent spiraling toward him in frustration. For the first time, she had to stop and reconsider. This wasn't like any human she'd encountered before. There were no pleasantries, no diplomacy. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even trying to fight in any way that made sense. It was as if he were more concerned with annoying her than actually surviving. Vera, who had been trained to confront powerful foes with the singular goal of domination, found herself caught off guard by the human's bizarre approach to survival. The power she had sensed earlier, that hidden force, seemed even more elusive now. She could feel it still, just beneath the surface, like a secret waiting to be uncovered, but she needed to know how to reach it. All right, enough of this, she snapped, her patience growing thin. Let's see how you handle this. Her voice was sharp, and the very air seemed to grow heavier as her power flared. With a thought, she activated a pulse from her suit, a wave of pure kinetic energy designed to knock the human off his feet and force him to the ground. A simple technique, effective. No time wasted. But once again, Ian did the unexpected. Instead of bracing for impact, instead of even flinching, he dropped to the ground and rolled. Just like a human, awkwardly, almost comically. He didn't try to dodge the pulse with skill or grace. No, he ignored it altogether, as if the pulse didn't matter. He landed, sat up, and then wiped some dust off his shirt as though he had just gotten out of bed. Okay, that was kind of rude, he said, looking up at her with mild annoyance, as though she'd just knocked over his coffee. What's with the overkill? I'm still standing here, aren't I? Her mind reeled. How is he doing this? With a snap of her fingers, Vera called forth the gravity manipulators in her suit, creating a small localized field that would increase the force of gravity in Ian's immediate vicinity. The result would be that he would be pinned to the floor, struggling to breathe, his every movement slowed. She had used this technique on creatures far stronger than he. Yet when the field activated, Ian simply lay there, as if the crushing force wasn't even touching him. Okay, now you're just showing off, he said with a smirk, though his voice was still lighthearted. I mean, really? How many of these moves do you have? Vera took a step back, her mind racing. How was he not affected by her gravity field? No human should have been able to resist it. This wasn't normal, but she had to admit, he wasn't struggling. He was relaxed, completely at ease. That's when she realized something, the change in his behavior, the strange calm, the effortless deflection of every force she applied. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't his luck. It wasn't even a product of some physical anomaly. It was something else. Something human. Ian wasn't playing by the same rules. The sudden realization hit her like a shockwave. She had been underestimating him. It wasn't just that he was unpredictable. It was that his very nature defied her understanding. Humans, she'd been told, were weak, easily manipulated by their emotions, incapable of true resilience. Yet here Ian was, proving her wrong at every turn. Okay, now this is just getting interesting, Ian said, as though reading her thoughts, his smile widening. You're really going to have to step up your game, lady. I'm all for a good challenge. Vera, still unsure whether she wanted to strangle him or analyze him, decided to try one last tactic. She raised her hands and the arena's perimeter lighting flickered, signaling that the final move was coming. You've had your fun, human. Let's see if you can withstand an actual challenge. The ground beneath them shifted, and an array of metallic arms shot up from the arena floor, each one holding a different weapon. Energy whips, plasma blades, and shock pulses designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. Vera had mastered each of these weapons, and she was about to show Ian exactly what he was up against. But Ian just chuckled. Oh, this is gonna be fun. And with that, everything around him changed. The weapons, the arena, All of it began to distort in the strangest, most chaotic fashion. A low hum vibrated the very air, and Ian's eyes glinted with a spark she hadn't noticed before. Oh no, she thought. The game had just shifted again. The strange hum that vibrated the very air around them grew louder, almost deafening. It was a noise that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, as if the entire arena were caught between dimensions. Vera's eyes darted, trying to make sense of the shifting metal arms and weapons now suspended in midair, their lines of motion bending unnaturally, like a well-organized dance, but one conducted by an unpredictable conductor. For a moment, the arena itself seemed to hold its breath. Okay, I didn't expect the entire place to go Matrix on me, Ian said, holding up his hands as if to gesture at the weapons floating around him. But sure, let's do this. It'll make things way more exciting. Vera's mind raced. The weapons, plasma whips, energy blades, sharp-edged force fields, they were all moving according to an unpredictable pattern. This was not her doing. This was not her mastery of the arena's tech. This was him. Somehow Ian had triggered a shift in the very fabric of reality, and in a flash she realized he wasn't just standing there, unaffected. No, he was shaping the outcome. He had become a part of the environment. How? Vera demanded, unable to suppress the edge in her voice. Ian glanced up at her, grinning. How? Well, it's not like I have all the answers, but I think you're finally figuring it out. It's me, right? I've got this thing, like a connection with reality. At first I didn't know what it was, but it turns out I'm a little special when it comes to manipulating the universe. Pretty neat, huh? Her mind was a swirl of confusion and realization. He was controlling the environment. But how? No human could manipulate physical laws like this. I thought humans were weak, she muttered to herself. The irony of the situation was almost too much. The entire Aranthi Dominion, her entire race, had underestimated the unpredictable nature of humanity. They had thought them chaotic, easily broken. And yet Ian wasn't chaotic. He was simply alive in a way that was too complex to grasp. His strength lay not in power or manipulation, but in something deeper, something inherently human. She glanced at him, her ears twitching in frustration and awe. You're not even trying to fight me, are you? He shrugged, casually dodging a plasma whip that came a little too close for comfort. Nah, I mean, look at you. You're awesome and all, but honestly, I'm just here to enjoy the ride. Let's not make this a death match, okay? Vera felt her frustration flare again, but this time there was a shift in her perception. She wasn't just facing an unpredictable human anymore. She was facing something else entirely. Ian had tapped into something so basic, so profound, that the very fabric of the arena bent in response. It wasn't power. It wasn't brute force. It was something that defied logic, a force born of humanity itself. It was the force of life, of choice, the refusal to be bound by the rules. As Ian danced around the floating weapons, he didn't move with the precision of a trained fighter. Instead, his actions were clumsy, erratic, uncoordinated, yet somehow it worked. He was just there, a presence that could not be ignored. You really are something else, Vera muttered, more to herself than to him. He shot her a grin, his eyes gleaming with something mischievous. Yeah, well, I try. It's not every day I get to face a space warrior and, not die. He paused. By the way, you might want to duck. Vera barely had time to react before a massive energy pulse shot through the air, narrowly missing her as she dodged to the side. The pulse hit the arena walls, sending a shockwave through the entire structure, sending a chorus of mechanical whines echoing across the space. The floating weapons now spun around wildly, as if confused by the sudden disruption, and in that moment, Vera realized something. Ian had tapped into the very energy of the arena, the way it was meant to be used. It wasn't about controlling, overpowering, or defeating. It was about syncing with it, becoming part of it. Okay, she said, finally allowing herself a chuckle. You win, human. I get it. Ian stopped mid-dance, his expression a mix of confusion and curiosity. Wait, what do you mean? Vera's gaze softened for the first time since their match began. I underestimated you. I thought you were just chaotic. But you, Ian, you're not just surviving. You're living. You bend the rules not with force, but with your existence. You make reality work for you without ever truly trying to control it. Ian blinked. Um, I guess. I still don't know what I'm doing, but it feels right. Weird, huh? Very, she said, smiling despite herself. And maybe that's something I can learn from. I've spent so long thinking control was the key to everything. But maybe the key is letting go. Ian stretched, hands behind his head, as if nothing in the universe could ever bother him. That's like way deeper than I expected. But hey, if you want, we can grab a drink later and talk about it more. I'm good with that. Drinks, Vera repeated, a grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. You humans have strange priorities, but I think I could get used to that. Maybe, maybe we could start with some snacks. You do have snacks, right? Ian's face lit up. Snacks? You're speaking my language now. The atmosphere around them, once charged with the intensity of their battle, had shifted. The arena no longer hummed with the threat of destruction, but with something else entirely, an unspoken understanding. Vera had come to the colony to show her superiority, to prove the power of the Aranthi Dominion. What she hadn't counted on was that in this one human, she would encounter something even more powerful. The ability to live freely, without constraints, and to shape reality in a way that no empire could ever truly control. As they walked toward the exit of the arena, the crowd, who had been watching, rapt, finally broke into spontaneous applause, some laughing, some cheering, others simply shaking their heads in disbelief. Even the sentient soda machine emitted a series of happy bleeps, as if it too recognized the absurd beauty of the moment. So, Ian said, turning to Vera as they left the arena, you think I've got this power thing figured out? Vera chuckled, a genuine sound that surprised even her. Maybe not figured out, but you've certainly shown me that sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight at all. Ian grinned. Good thing too. I was never really one for fighting. And as they disappeared into the night, the stars overhead seemed to wink in agreement. Perhaps, just perhaps, the universe had always known what it was doing when it placed the Aranthi warrior and the unpredictable human in the same space. The real challenge, after all, had always been about finding common ground. And in that, Ian had proven far more formidable than any empire could ever be.